In May 2013, 12 experts from Africa and Asia came to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to take part in the ELA study tour on climate disaster risk reduction in urban areas. ELA, which stands for Evidence and Lessons from Latin America, is a program funded by UK Aid. The idea of this program is to share good practices from Latin America with different actors in the developing world, namely within Africa and Asia, as this is a South-South learning exchange. The most interactive of the ELA products has been the Learning Alliance, and here in Brazil our focus is on climate resilient cities. So the Learning Alliance is a space which brings together interested professionals working on this specific theme to an online platform whereby we follow a curriculum and discuss a variety of themes. It is an opportunity to network with other people from different countries and to share good practices from across the 3 regions. The study tour was the culmination of the Learning Alliance, providing an opportunity for members to come and interact with each other and to interact with their Latin American counterparts, as well as seeing practices which are really taking place here in Brazil. The idea of the visits was to show participants good practices that might potentially be adapted and applied within their own contexts, and also provided participants an opportunity to network and to potentially set up collaborative efforts.
For an NGO of the South to bring people from the South to the South to learn is groundbreaking. We normally go to the North. Many of the topics that we discussed online, we got an opportunity to actually see firsthand some of the places, so we could apply what had been learnt online to seeing what was on the ground, and then having reflection sessions on the study tour with other participants. And the learning was just that much deeper because people challenged you.
É fundamental compartilhar as informações. E o que mais interessante é que muitos países parecidos com as características do Brasil também têm as mesmas dificuldades.
Over the course of the week, we visited 3 urban areas, 1 small, 1 medium and 1 large. We had meetings with a variety of actors working on and affected by disaster risk reduction strategies. The institution largely responsible for risk monitoring, improving preparedness and risk reduction in Brazil is the Civil Defense.
It's very important to institutionalize disaster management, and from what I gather here, you can see Civil Defense works with municipalities, they work with prefectura, they work with academic institutions, so there is that cross-institutional link or relationship in which each of those experts within their own field, they bring their knowledge to factor into risk assessment, disaster risk reduction, and climate disaster resilience.
One of the most striking differences with home that the participants perceived was the involvement of the community in disaster risk reduction. The Civil Defense in Rio de Janeiro showed to be very committed to raising awareness and improving preparedness.
Começamos com uma atividade dentro das escolas. A disciplina de Defesa Civil, Educação Ambiental, Primeiros Socorros e o exercício simulado de evacuação está dentro das escolas. Não somente as escolas que servem de referência para as comunidades onde essas crianças estudam, mas todas as escolas da cidade de Janeiro terão implementados a disciplina de Defesa Civil, Educação Ambiental, Primeiros Socorros no 5º ano do ensino fundamental. E não tem outra porta de entrada melhor do que essa inserção dessas estratégias dentro das escolas.
The component of disaster has not been very strong in our education. I mean, we don't have it in schools. But this is a very good initiative that we need to incorporate it into our curricula, into our education system. We need to do more education. And once we have this system in place, because these children are very young people who are coming, and once you instill these ideas into them, I mean, they carry the message across and it's going to really work perfectly.
Civil Defense personnel explained how their success rates in terms of reducing disasters was largely due to the relationships of trust that they had built within the communities.
And they have a very coordinated system of response to disasters, and this has come with a human face. This kind of personal attachment to the people who are at risk from disaster or had been victims of disaster is something uncommon.
Geralmente as ações, quando se fala de governo, é uma ação de cima para baixo, mas nós estamos buscando as demandas da comunidade, como que a comunidade se comporta frente a uma ameaça, frente a um desastre, e a necessidade dela está vindo de encontro com os projetos do governo do Estado do Rio de Janeiro.
Working with communities, you need to visit them frequently and know their needs, what they want, and if everything is okay, especially with the measures or systems you are working with in the community, whether they are used to, it's okay for them and they can work with it.
Sense of community was also built among the members of the study tour. Evenings were spent exchanging experiences and getting to know one another personally and professionally. We celebrated a birthday, enjoyed a cultural evening, and saw some of Rio de Janeiro's landmark sites. In fact, the visit to the megacity provided some of the most profound lessons. These lessons were largely to do with monitoring risks and communicating effectively with vulnerable communities.
Interesting for me and absolutely a new insight was when we as a group visited the operational center, we found there was huge sources of information coming from different, sources, multiple sources I would say. I think I could not count the number of screens. They have their instruments and people right on the ground who collect this information on a real-time basis. That is the first thing that I found very interesting. Second is they were very particular in screening those information, layers and layers of information. So this information is coming from the community or coming from different sources, but they take a lot of care in communicating that information back to the people, so that people, those who are on the ground or common citizens like you and me, can take real-time actions on that. For climate risk management and for emergency response, this is something new I never have seen in my country.
In Rio de Janeiro, select members of vulnerable communities have been given mobile phones and signed up to a text messaging service from the Civil Defence, which provides information on coming rains and the state of alert. Where necessary, these community members warn and mobilise others.
I really learned a lot. The first one has to do with information, communication and technology, and that has to do with the use of cell phones, to communicate information. Information is communicated to them when there's any disaster that is going to happen. These people have text messages, and it's really working very well in Brazil, which I think should be replicated back home.
The study tour provided an opportunity to witness how urban areas within the state of Rio de Janeiro are really committed to disaster risk reduction.
The amount of money and resources, or even the attention that disaster management is given in Mozambique, you can't compare that to what's happening in Brazil.
The participants went away inspired by some of the disaster risk reduction practices, but also inspired by the value of sharing lessons.
Learning we've had is probably quite rare, because we've had the experience of so many different organizations that have wanted to teach us and enable us to learn something. So I think I'll take that back home. It's kind of a challenge that South Africa needs to do the same thing as a middle-income developing country like Brazil.
My hope is that we'll be able to translate what we've learned here and adapt to a context and maintain that link and hope, and so we can share amongst many of the participants of different countries that were here.
Quem é que vem que tá vai? Cá tomam conta cutelo mas que se cá desprezam panca manga aquele que me jojo cá toma.